Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Spirit School. This is going to be a hot topic. This is a very high in demand, requested topic on life with non-spiritual partners. Your life partner does not believe in the spirit world, does not consider spiritual evolution as part of the human path, who has no interest in the things that you are passionate about and interested in. How do we cope? How do we deal? Why do we stick around? When is it, unsatisfying versus, just part of life and part of like the karmic path? We're going to be talking about all things today about coexisting, thriving spiritually with non-spiritual partners. So a couple of disclaimers before we get started. One, this is a requested podcast episode from Spirit School Collective member and Expanding Mediumship Masterminder, Avery. So thank you, Avery. When I was in New Zealand a couple weeks ago, she sent me a message and I was like, well, we're going to make this a podcast episode. What are your questions on it? So I'm going to answer her questions. And then we got a request from Becky, who is a new member in the Spirit School Collective, just yesterday when we were doing kind of like get to know you posts. And I just want to know where everyone's from, what they're focused on developing. And I asked the question, what would you love to learn from me? And she wrote, more about your story. What made you pursue your development? What is difficult in the beginning? Was there a time when doing a corporate job and readings on the side? What was it like? So we're going to be answering that. And then I posted a reel, which I never do. But I actually posted a reel last week because I felt so inspired to do so on the topic. And it says at the top, having a non-spiritual life partner deepened my connection to my inner spiritual world. And that is 100% true. And we will get to that as we move through this conversation. But I mean, we had over 40 people respond with their own comments, their own questions for this episode. So we're going to go through some of that as well. So this could be a little bit of a longer one. Some of the other disclaimers are, I am not a relationship expert. In fact, I choose to not really dip into relationships, even in my sessions. I think that they're very intimate. I think that they're tied to a lot of karma, a lot of free will. I think that we can learn something from all the different relationships that we engage and interact in. So what I offer you today is just purely based off of my experiences. If you come into any classes, workshops, programs with me, I'm always starting off the containers like that. I say I'm an experiential teacher. I don't teach above my comprehension and I don't teach other people's content. I teach based off of my own lived experiences and my understanding of these experiences with the limited framework of where I'm at spiritually today, which will be different than where I will be spiritually 5 years from now and 10 years ago. So today it is April 10th, 2024. I'm going to be sharing my experiences, my reflections, my higher learnings on them based off of my depth of understanding of them in the here and now and today. So if by some reason you hear from me in this episode from your own understanding of what I'm saying, leave this relationship or just stick it out, it is not that. I will share with you all the different reasons why it ended up working really well for me and why I am incredibly happy that I chose to grow through my spiritual evolution with a partner that has no interest in evolving spiritually. And yes, it came with its frustrations. Yes, it came with a lot of resentment and, contemplation here or there. Like, is this going to be the best thing for all of us? Like moving forward, is everyone happy here? And I will say that the tough conversations that we've had to have throughout our marriage, only help strengthen our connection to each other and get really clear on, our boundaries and like what we'll stand for and what we won't stand for. So I'm going to share all this. Also keeping in mind that my husband is a deeply private person. I do not share him very much on social media. He has no interest in being in a spotlight in any way, shape, or form. He is a very simple and beautifully simple human being. One of my favorite things about my husband is he has never said a bad word about anyone. Like, he is genuinely a kind and considerate human being. And so even though he has no interest in spiritually evolving, it doesn't mean that he's any less of a good and decent human being and that, he doesn't have his own wisdom and that he is not living a full and fulfilled life of his own. And, I know for sure that like I didn't start developing mediumship or even expanding spiritually until I was 31 years old. I lived a really full, happy, vibrant, successful, not without its trials and tribulations and capital T and little t trauma, before I woke up to my spirituality. And, one of my favorite quotes around this, and I wish I could remember who was to give it proper credit, but there was someone who I heard say, spiritually evolving doesn't necessarily make me the best person, but it definitely keeps me from being my worst. And that is one thing that I absolutely believe to be true. I still have petty moments. I still suffer. I still struggle. A lot of the embodied teachings that I bring into my classes, membership, and this podcast and these spaces are because I struggle and because I'm willing to sit in the discomfort of some of these challenges in life. There's no better way to embody, to integrate some of these real life 3D human experience teachings than going through, sticking out, seeing through the other side some of these things in life that really stretch us and challenge us. And so I can take away those higher learnings and I can release with love and care and appreciation all the things I don't need to carry with me into the next season of being a medium and being a mentor and being a mom and being a wife. And so, let's start here and let's start going back to the beginning. So your experience is going to be different than mine. Your priorities in a relationship, your deal breakers are going to be very different than mine. And we're going to get really deep into this as we move along this conversation. But let's start it off light. And I just wanted to share the astrology because that was one thing that happened on the Instagram post was how many people were saying that their husbands were a Capricorn. And, somebody came in, was like, definitely a little bit, Capricorns could be spiritual too. I'm like, I know my assistant, Andrea, is also a double Capricorn like my husband, and she is spiritual AF and she gives amazing, incredible readings. But she is also someone who can, because of all that earth, can help you navigate and walk through some of that sticky, icky human stuff, right? So every sign can be spiritual because we are spirit. Our purest essence is one that we are spirit and we are having a human experience. We have this casing, this skin, this flesh, these veins, these pulses, these bones, right? These joints just for a finite time. But our infinite part of ourselves is our spirit, and we all have that spirit, no matter where our cosmic placements are. Our astrology just simply gives us a roadmap onto the things that we chose to struggle with, the things that we chose to thrive through, when we are living in the highest quality of these placements and when we are living in the shadow quality of these placements. And so that's I think that there is such a deep understanding that we can get through people's astrology, but never let me say like Virgos are more spiritual than Capricorns, are more connected than Cancers, are more than connected than Sagittarius, right? We all have all these placements in our chart. We just have different degrees and planets and angles that either let us know if this is going to be an area of like ease and flow or an area of like struggle and growth, right? And we don't grow truly in ways that we can through strife and trouble that we do when things are like easy and flowy. But the wheels of fortune continue to change, and flow will come and ebbs will come, and that is the cycle of life that we will continuously find ourselves in. And if we bail on a relationship so quickly because of XYZ and we haven't worked through those higher learnings and those karmic teachings, we will encounter that same thing in the next area that we end up in, whether it's the next relationship or, there were certain insecurities and wounds that were coming up to me in corporate that were so easy to miss in corporate that they started showing up when I was an entrepreneur and things were like real. And I was like, okay, I can't ignore this anymore. So it carried with me. So it's sometimes worth it to look at some of these relationships that maybe feel, and I'm putting in air quotes, like not aligned, and see if there's an opportunity to grow through them while we're in them, and then make more conscious decisions on the other side with some of the clarity in, navigating what it is that we're karmically and dharmically meant to navigate through some of these interactions and intersections in life, right? So let's get back to the astrology. So I am a Virgo sun, Okay, wait, I forgot what I was here for a second. I'm a Virgo sun, a Sagittarius moon, and a Scorpio rising. I have my North Node in Cancer. My husband is a Capricorn sun, a Libra moon. I love Libra men, and a Capricorn rising, and a Leo North Node. So he is a double Capricorn. So I wanted to bring that in. And it's important to know that me and my husband met in 2006 working on a race car team. We both worked for Subaru Rally Team Canada. And, I did the logistics and the marketing, and I was team manager, and I was the only female on the team. And my husband built the race cars. He was a custom fabricator. He'd been building race cars his whole life. He was from New Zealand. We were both in other relationships when we started working together. And in truth, I never really noticed him that much because he was so quiet. So quiet. I don't even know if I heard him talk for like a year. And if you meet my husband, you'll know he's not very chatty, and he's very quiet, and he's 6'4". He's a beach volleyball player, surfer. He has some nerve damage now. He's not able to do that kind of stuff as of last year. And it's really hard for us right now kind of navigating that, but he's handsome, he's tall, he's kind, he's generous, and we really did meet connecting through race cars. I'd been working with race car teams since I was 17 years old, and I got my first break with this dad that was running a software company, and I worked in a gym daycare in high school. And when I graduated high school, he was like, "Come work for me," that first summer. And I ended up working at the software company where they developed all the in-car telemetry systems for race cars like Formula One, Le Mans, Champ Car, IndyCar, NASCAR. And so I started getting really into race cars when I was 17 years old. And I traveled with team players and worked for that race car series for quite a few years until it went bankrupt in 2005. And found myself in Squamish, Googling a race car team, a race to go see, and I came across a rally shop, Subaru Rally Team Canada, that was based here in Squamish, and I just moved here. So I walked into the shop and I said, "What do you guys do here?" And they were asking about me, and essentially they hired me off the street. And I worked for that team up until I think 2012, I think it was. So I was with them for quite some time, about 5 or 6 or 7 seasons. It was a dream job. It was an incredible experience in my life, something that, I definitely look back on next to my wedding and my children's birth. I will remember that job more than anything ever, because we were a team and there was 8 of us, and none of us were from Squamish, and all of us had moved there essentially for the race car team. So we spent a lot of time together. There were no egos. It was like we had one common goal: to win the championship and to win every race and to support our leader, who was the race car driver. And so it was very clean energy when we met. We both made the same amount of money. We worked at the same place. We're both athletic. And so we spent all of our time like hiking up mountains, like playing beach volleyball. You could not get me inside. I was like a marathon runner back then. I was like very, very athletic. And, I switched jobs and went into First Nations healthcare because they kept asking me to come work for them. And I turned it down quite a few times because I was like, I love my job. I work with my husband. I work with race cars. Like, there was no way I was leaving that job. But as I started thinking about having a family, race car industry is a very hard industry to have little kids in. For example, every November, just because of our race schedule, I think me and my husband would make about $1.20 an hour because we were working like 80-hour weeks on the road in the middle of the forest. It was just there's no mat leave, right? Like there's no mat leave, there's no light schedule. And so I did start opening up the possibility of working in First Nations healthcare for our people. And I'm really glad I made that transition when I did. And it was a very aligned transition. And it really was through my work at the First Nations Health Authority that I built my confidence, that I was able to see my capacity and my capabilities, my intelligence, my interpersonal skills. It was a place of huge human growth for me. And what ended up happening was about a year and a half into my career there, I got pregnant with our first child. We had been trying to have children for years, and I had loss after loss after loss after loss. I am the mother of 6 children that only holds 2 here in life. And I'm very fortunate for that. But it was a very hard few first years of our marriage because my husband has always wanted children. Before he even asked me out for a first date, he said, "Do you want kids?" And I was 27 at the time and he was 37. And I was like, I guess so. Yeah, I guess that could happen, And we'd spent the next 4 years trying for Katie Jane, which we had her when I was 31 and he was 41. And so it was actually during that mat leave, and this goes to Becky, I think it was. Becky's question here about the beginning, right? So in, 2013 in corporate, good thing this is how come I think I've been led by angels this whole time, because I ended up in this government job that not only do I get a year off with my baby, but I get 100% of my pay. So I don't have to worry about money. I don't have to worry about scaling back. It's like I get a whole year with my baby and I get all my pay. And it was a really crazy time for me because I had been working, earning my own money pretty much since I was a kid, like 10, 11 years old. I've been like running errands and making money and I'm buying my own things. And I have always worked, right? Capricorn South Node, work, work, work. It comes easily for me. I enjoy it. And so I found myself with a lot of extra time. And yes, parenting is hard. And yes, I could do a whole episode on my 2 traumatic birth experiences and all that fun stuff, but that's not what this episode is about. What I found was I had a lot of time that I did not have before. I never had the privilege of time and rest and recuperation before 2013 when I had my first maternity leave. And I synchronistically ended up with a ticket to see a medium locally do a group demonstration. And I remembered all those years of watching Sylvia Brown and John Edwards on TV. And essentially that's what they did. They stood in front of an audience and they gave readings to people for TV. And so I had a good friend at the time come watch Katie Jane, and she was just a few months old, and really go see this medium demonstrate in front of 100 people here in Squamish at the Adventure Center, I think it's called, the Info Center, Adventure Center. And the first spirit that came through was my grandfather, and she knew everything about him, his name, like what he did. And somebody else stole my spirit. Like literally someone's like, "That's for me." I'm like, "No, that cannot be for you." Like that, everything about that is my grandfather. But I was too shy to really fight for the spirit. So I just kind of sat there and accepted. Everything made sense, including the message. And I was like, "Chick stole my spirit," like literally. That's what I thought. And so I ended up booking a private session with this medium, and a month later ended up getting what still to this day is the best reading I've ever had in my life with this medium who connected with my grandmother, who saw some spiritual experiences I'd had that I didn't understand. I was able to see before my mediumship, funny enough, a handful of times I was able to see spirit objectively beside my bed, always beside my bed, sometimes in daylight, sometimes in nightlight, but they were able to see this experience I'd had where a boy was standing next to my husband on his side of the bed, and I was fully awake. I literally was hitting him, and I was like, "Nick, there's a boy next to you." And I would like hide and pop up, and I could still see him. And my husband woke up and he couldn't see him. And this was like, a couple years before we had a baby, and my first mentor and the medium that connected me for the first time could see that experience. And I had actually forgotten about it. And I was like, wow. So, her, like every other medium I had ever seen in my life, everything makes sense in hindsight, but it said, "You'll be doing this. And I think that I'll be getting readings from you one day." I'm like, no, 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 no. And I said to her this exact thing: I am not pure enough to speak to the angels. Another clue how prominent angels would become in my life later on as well. And she just laughed at me and she said, "Girl, you do not have to be pure to do this work. Actually, the least pure you are, the more that you can help people." And I was like, dang, because I have a very colorful past. And so she did convince me to come to her development class. But I was so convinced I was not a medium that I wouldn't sign up for her mediumship class. I would only sign up for her her intuitive class. So I drove 380 kilometers every week to this development class. And one week I was on the way. I'd already crossed like 3 cities and I had a little baby at home. I had to get parents up there to help so I could go to this class that was at 5 p.m., but I had to leave Squamish at 3 because it took me hours to get there and hours to get home. And it was a lot of fun for me. And it was like the first time I kind of did something for myself. And about 3 classes in, she tried to cancel the class halfway because she said no one can come. And I was like, oh no, I'm like already halfway. And, I'd already been on the road for like hours at this point. And she's like, okay, just come. We'll just see what happens. So me and this one other woman showed up. And it was just the 2 of us. And my teacher said, I just want to try something. And she said, Danielle, close your eyes and tell me what you see. And in that moment, I heard the name Dustin, and I knew that I was working with an 18-year-old boy. So I said, there's a boy here. He's with his grandmother. He's 18 years old, and his name is Dustin. And this woman leapt out of her chair and went, and she grabbed me and like looked at me with like such a intensity that I was shocked and I was terrified. And she said, that's my son, Justin. And he was 18 and he had just passed a couple months before, but the intensity of her grief like severed any connection I had. And I didn't know what connection was. I didn't know how to do that. And my teacher was like, amazing. She's like, that's mediumship. I'm like, that's it? I was like, I just said what I was thinking. And she was like, that's it. Because I was only seeing shadows and she was clairvoyant. So she could see everything like full color. And it took me years to realize I was not a clairvoyant medium. But I kept trying to see and see and see, which was part of my not enoughness in my early development. And I did sit with that woman 3 more times over the next few years and continued to improve in my mediumship. And, the last time we met was at a psychic fair I was at, and I got to do an hour. She bought 2 back-to-back sittings with me. And yeah, I still remember that reading so fondly. And God, I'm going to cry. I'm so appreciative of that first experience and that first spirit. And I have a picture of him, and he's amazing. Takes you back. These were like the best days of my life, right? And so I left that experience and I declared to the spirit world, and I said, I can see now through being a teenager and going to like watch Sylvia Browne when I was like 18 and going to haunted locations when I was like 20, being a paranormal investigator for years, like how many times I have been kind of like shown this path, but just didn't have the awareness to pursue it. And so, it was just like a really beautiful experience, and I loved it. And, going to my marriage now after this experience, keep in mind, it had only been like 3 or 4 weeks. I started going to these like meditation classes, and my husband's like a very practical man. I remember sitting on the couch with my baby on me, and I said, I have something really uncomfortable to tell you. And he was like, what? And I was like, I'm a medium. Do you know what that is? And the first thing he said to me was, you are not going to quit your job, are you? And I remember like, oof, like it felt like I got like punched in the heart, because I don't think even to this day he realizes like how much courage it took to say those words to him, because obviously, the first phase of our development, we are fragile little papayas, paper thin, we don't have thick skin. We don't have all the belief in ourselves in the spirit world. Like we are building a spiritual self-esteem and self-confidence that can take a generation to literally accomplish, and we are paper thin when we are usually first starting. And so right away I felt very unsupported and very unseen in my mediumship journey. But I had made this declaration to the spirit world, which that felt very soul led, and it felt almost like soul contract, to be honest with you. There was never a question about leaving the path. Like there has been nothing, even to this day, and I have been through some really hard things on this path, like public humiliation, hate mail, death threats, a non-believing husband. I have never left this path, and I have never wavered on serving the spirit world. And so it never occurred to me to ever leave it, but I did realize through that first experience of opening up, like, wow, okay, I'm not held. I'm not safe here to talk about this. That's really how it was. And actually, as I'm saying it, my lower back is starting to ache. And just so you know, like, you know, if you believe the work of Louise Hay and our body is always speaking to us, as am reactivating some of these emotions and going through some of these stories, I can feel the lack of support at that time, because I can feel my lower back actually starting to like ache. You know what I mean? And so just, you know, I'm breathing some light into it, some love into it, and I'm letting myself know you are supported, you are safe, because obviously me and my husband 13 years later, it's been 13 years, are in an incredibly different space now than we were back then. And so that was really my first experience opening up to him. And I still continued going to these classes. And the truth of the matter is, for the next few years, I received more comments like that, and not a very deep sense of understanding. And, you know, for my husband, like my abilities came to the awareness, came to the surface of my life after the birth of my daughter. And keeping in mind, all he wanted was a child. Like, he just wanted to be a dad. And I think that, you know, through the birth of my daughter and finding myself with all this time, that like there was always more of a calling than just being a mom for me. And I think he had a really hard time accepting that. It was very confusing for him to understand why I wouldn't just want to sit at home with my daughter all the time, or why that wasn't enough. And it's not that it wasn't enough. It was that I was expanding, and I was expanding in all areas. I wasn't just expanding as a mom. I was expanding as a human. I was healing my shit. Like, you cannot develop without healing. Like, people who bail on the development path, I think, have a hard time with how much healing is required of our inner world, of our concepts. Like, not only are we venturing into spiritual spaces, but our beliefs, our understanding of our experiences, everything gets rocked when we first hop on this path. Nothing is the ground still beneath us, and is the sky still up? Is the sky still blue? Is the grass really green? You know, our whole worldview completely shifts, and that includes our intimate relationship. It includes how we view our parents. It includes how we view our childhood. Everything shifts. And, you know, I want to give kudos and credit to my husband for standing by me, even as a non-believer and like non-interest in my path, that while I navigated this world-rocking worldview shift and change, like, he stood by me through all of this. And an overall theme, and you'll hear me mention it a few times, is I changed a lot. He married someone who was an athlete who you couldn't get me inside. We would wake up and I'd be like, what are we doing today? Like, let's get out. Let's go to a lake. Let's hike a mountain. Let's go play volleyball. Let's go like snowboarding. Let's go. Like, that was how I was. And then all of a sudden I start developing, and I just want to meditate, and I just want to be alone in my bedroom with my cards and my pendulum. I want to, instead of spending weekends with him, I want to go to my class that's almost 400 kilometers away around trip, and I'm there all day. So I can imagine, as hard as it was for me to accept this new worldview and be so passionate about something that is not about him and not about my daughter, I can only imagine how he must have been feeling around that time too. And, you know, he's a very secure male. He's not patriarchal in any way. You know, he's an equal contributor to the house. He's probably even more of a contributor when it comes to, you know, domestic engineering, in truth. He didn't feel emasculated in any way. And it took us many years of conversations and even an ultimatum eventually in 2019, when I still wasn't feeling supported by him. That was our big pivotal year. I'm jumping ahead a little bit on my timeline here, but it just flows with it. And I had to sit him down, and I had to say, look, I've been on this path for 6 years. I get nothing but lack of support and resentment from you anytime I go do readings or take a development class or use family finances towards my spiritual development. And I had to just say, I am not leaving this path. So either you're on it with me or you get off. And that is it. And it really took that conversation to finally get what the issue was out over the past 6 years. And it was essentially an envy and a jealousy of sorts. Like, jealousy and envy are very different. Jealousy is like you're taking something away, and envy is I want what you have, like you expand me. And so it was a bit of a jealousy that I have found a purpose. And like he felt very unsatisfied, especially in career, because this was tied into my career. And of course, living in a capitalistic society, everything's focused on career here and money and how you earn. And, whenever I'm in New Zealand, and I was in New Zealand, for 18 days this past month, not one person asked me, what do you do for work? Not a single person. What do you do for work? Not a single person, because it's only our culture thing. It's like Canada, US. It's like, what do you do for work? How do you earn money? What's your purpose, right? So then we tie our purpose to our income, which that just so happens to be my case, but that's not the case for absolutely everyone. And so there was like this certain level of jealousy that they brought up, my husband, saying, I think it's because like you have found something that you're really passionate about, and I haven't, when it came to like career and work. And so, over the years, it's very clear. It's so clear. His passion is family. My husband is a family man. He wants to spend every waking moment with our children, every waking moment with me. And, this is how come we have a lot of like hiccups in our relationships, because we're all speaking our own love languages and never everyone else's. And I'm not sure how I feel about the whole love language philosophy, but, he's trying to project through me that I have the exact same values as him and I have the exact same priorities as him, when we have collective priorities, but we also are individual spirits. We also have individual paths. And so we have to be able to have the freedom, space, energy, time, finances to be able to pursue our own paths while we're also on this bigger collective path together. And then we look at our larger family, we have a path that we all walk together. And then societally, we have a path we're all walking together. So we are walking so many different paths together, but we still have this individual chart. Like our astrology chart is as unique as a thumbprint, because we were born at this minute, at this second, in this city, in this day, in this year. And we have like this unique journey that we are also meant to pursue on our own. And I think maybe my husband was thinking like we were meant to do it all together. And that's not always the case, right? Like there are things that we have to walk alone. There are things other people cannot hold space for us for. There are, pilgrimages that we have in life that we are meant to like walk alone. It's very, very true. And so, there was another situation. There was two more situations. I'm going to talk about the negative ones, and I'm going to move into the more positive ones, okay? Because I have some advice, and maybe you learn something based off of our story and our experiences. But, after developing for 4 years with this teacher and traveling, and, our development circles were structured in a way that we just met once a month, but for 5 hours. I had no idea you could even learn online until 2020, by the way, when I opened up Spirit School. I thought I was revolutionary. I thought I was like doing something that's never been done. And I was like, oh no, people have been like studying online. I had no idea. Everything was in person for me up until 2020. And, I had an opportunity gifted to me to do my first paid public sittings. I never probably would have charged or had done that if I wasn't forced by my shamanic initiator and shamanic teacher, who asked me to come do readings at one of her events. And I did do these $20 sessions at her ceremony, and they booked out right away. And then after that, I started having people like literally reach out to me saying, so-and-so had a reading. Hi, Ross. So-and-so had a reading. Can I have one? And that's really how things started for me at my kitchen table. And so I started wanting to create and carve time out to be able to do these readings. So the funny thing was, the first place that I could find that I could do readings at, because at that time I had a 5-month-old baby and a 3-year-old daughter. So I had 2 babies now at this time, right? And so and then meanwhile, we're both progressing in our careers, and like I'm getting promoted, he's getting promoted. And, I became the breadwinner, and like that helped actually quite a bit with me being able to like take so much time away. And I wasn't necessarily spending little money that we had. We had a little bit more abundance at this time, as well as we'd been growing together as a family and as a partner. And, our lifestyle changed quite a bit too, because, I went from being an athlete to, after my 2 pregnancies, putting on 60 pounds, going from like a B cup to a double D cup, and I couldn't run. I could hardly even like hold a baseball bat without my boobs getting in the way. Like everything changed for me, my weight, my health, the 2 pregnancies. My second pregnancy almost killed me, literally. Like I was in critical care. It was a very traumatic experience for me. And so I was not the same person at all. And, as a matriarch, and I've been a matriarch in my family for a little bit of time, everyone really follows my lead. And so my husband did his best to try to hold his passions, which was beach volleyball, and he would go alone and I would stay at home with the kids. And so like everything was shifting in our relationship, but it was shifting because of me. And so that's how come I've had a very deep level of empathy for my husband, because he's not an asshole and he checks all the boxes in every other single way. And so if this is the only space that he's not able to hold space for me, I have to be able to be okay with that. And we'll go through the different phases of development and why that's like a downfall in certain phases of your development, but it's also, it's actually very divine in other areas and different phases of your development. So we'll go through that spiritual maturity conversation very soon. But going back to my first ever public readings, I rented out this space called Pins and Peoples, and it was $20 an hour, and I was charging $20 a reading. So I technically wasn't making anything. I basically took the $20 and I gave it to the studio, so I could rent their space out for it. And so, it was very cost neutral at the time. But I remember I was so nervous doing my first paid public readings. I advertised, I had filled up all the spots, and on the way out to the car, I was so nervous, and I stopped to him and I said, I am so scared right now. And he looked at me, he said, I cannot believe that you are choosing this over spending time with me and the kids. I literally started bawling, and I was on my way to go see my first client. I was so devastated and so freaked out. And I remember calling my mentor on the way to that first reading. I was like, please tell me you can do readings sad. Please tell me you can do readings, devastated, because I am bawling and I'm literally turning the key. My first client's going to be here in 5 minutes. And she was like, you can do this. And I did do it. And the readings were great. And they were very fulfilling, just as most readings are for me and always have been. Some are not, keep in mind, but most of them are. And, I was so disappointed. And of course he apologized when we got home, and that's just how he processes things. My husband, he's someone who, he doesn't talk a lot. He's very quiet. He's very shy. Not taught how to feel. A lot of men of his generation, not told how to feel, how to cry, how to process. It's like, be a man. There's a lot of pressure on men too, and women don't have it easy. I'm not saying anyone has it easier or not easier, but it definitely came up that he would just hold things, and then have like this big kind of like outburst, and all these months and years of resentment would come out at once. And that's been kind of like the pattern, and I kind of learned to accept it, and I call it out a bit more now, and things are a lot better now for sure. But I got to be honest with you, this same thing happened the day before the TV filming. I couldn't even believe it in November, like biggest moment in my career in like 5 years, and biggest opportunity. And I was so nervous, so scared, and just, I haven't changed that much. Like, we changed to a certain degree, but we're still going to be walking through our stuff, our life. It's our stuff. We got to bring it with us, and we become more resilient to it, but it's still there. Our triggers are always going to be our triggers. Our resilience and our coping continues to grow and expand as we spiritually mature. And so though it had been, 6 years between that first experience and the next experience, possibly even 7, the night before, I don't even remember what he said, but it was rooted in, it was like that old pattern. It was like the exact same thing. And I literally spent all night crying and literally planning out a divorce. Like, that's where I was at. And so I'm not pushing rainbows and butterflies up your butt. Like, I'm telling you, this is the things that we navigate when we are working with, and living, and, living a life with somebody who is just has different interests, and, doesn't have the same level of passion or interest in anything else in their life as well, right? So that was very devastating, and I was very upset the next day, and I kind of had this disassociation experience where I was like, you're on your own, Danielle. You got to figure this out for yourself, and like that is a blessing in a way, because the self-reliance I have, I wouldn't get if I had somebody who was like, cuddling me all the time, or like talking me down all the time. I have had to learn a lot of spiritual self-esteem through spiritual self-resilience and guiding myself through some of these situations. And I'm really happy for those experiences. But, the next day, I think he totally apologized and was like, I am so sorry. He's like, it's the envy, it's the jealousy stuff that kind of comes up, right? It's like, I wish I had these opportunities. And the truth is that the way that he was raised was very much with a negative bias, and I was raised with a positive bias. And his favorite thing about me, and he will say this, and he's been saying this consistently for the past 15 years, is you're so happy. He's like, you are genuinely happy. And I am a happy person, and I have always been a happy person. And no matter what shit comes my way, I will be sad for a while, and I go through moments of depression and sadness, but on the whole, I have a happy disposition and a positive outlook on life. And even if I forget it for a bit, I always come back to it. And so he did apologize for ruining it and wished me luck, and, was supportive before I left, which I was really grateful for, because it was a very expansive experience, and it was very nerve-wracking, and it definitely tested my capacities. And, there was a bit of a disappointment later in the day where the TV crew just really wanted him to come on camera just to say, my name is Nick and I'm Danielle's husband. And he wouldn't, and he won't, and he wants absolutely zero anything to do with any potential TV show. And he's made that very, very clear. And I have to honor that. I'm very lucky that he will let the children, because they do want to be involved if something happens, but he just doesn't. And I have to respect and honor that as well. So over the course of the years, and it's been 13 years, I've been developing my mediumship and have been a student in mediumship. And 8 years, I have been a leader in mediumship and guiding others and mentoring others through their own spiritual paths. And these are the bigger things that have happened. I will say that as I progressed along in my career, I started using the money that I got from readings towards my development. And that also helped ease a lot of the tension and a lot of the resentment that was in our relationship tied to finances. So I would just basically do readings for my development, for my Tony Stockwell retreats, for, paying my mentor and other mentors as I moved along my career. And so that really helped as well. And then my first couple years of doing this full time were very abundant. And so we were able to paint our house. We're homebodies, and that's one thing that we both connect in with, is that we both love our home, and we have very similar goals in life. Like, we both want to have a house on a lake, a cabin on a lake. We both love cars. We love Subarus. We love vehicles. We love our house. And so there's enough common life goals for us that if I'm not interested in his volleyball, because I am not, and I actually had a skin condition for years, I could not go in the sun. I hated it, and I supported him in it. But then after a while, when we became a lot more secure in our relationship with each other, I'm like, you go by yourself to the beach. Like, I don't want to blister out in the sun. And he didn't take it like I loved him any less, because I was not interested in going to the beach all day anymore, because I'm just not a beach person. And my interest was mediumship. And so we actually had enough security in our relationship as we progressed through the years, and as I held my guns and he held his guns, that's like, there is space for us in this relationship to pursue our passions outside of each other, right? And so the other thing that progressed over the years for us was, it took about 8 years of being on this path for him to finally say, and I still remember the first time he said to me this, he's like, how are your readings today? I was like, you care? He's like, kind of, not really, but I care about you. And so, he would let me say a couple things, and he wouldn't respond, and he wouldn't banter back with me, but it showed that he was, he was showing support in his own way. And that to me was incredible. It's really important if you're looking at your relationship with somebody who is not interested in spiritual growth or evolution to decide if that's a deal breaker for you. It wasn't for me. And it never will be for me because my spiritual path is one that is very intimate between me and the spirit world and me and the creator. And I can't bring any of you or my husband or my children on my individual spiritual path, right? I can't bring anyone on it with me. So it wasn't a deal breaker with me. If my husband was a deadbeat dad, if he was cynical, his motto is more apathy than cynicism. So he's not criticizing the spiritual space. He just doesn't think about it. He doesn't consider it. He doesn't care about it. He and his family believe that you are worm meat when you die, right? Like you go in the ground and that's where you stay forever. And it's nuts to me to think that. And I can't imagine even living a peaceful life believing that, but that's his belief. And who am I? I'm not going to convince him of his beliefs, and he's not going to try to convince me of his. So we have our children, our homes, our lifestyle around like vacation, and we both love lakes. Though I will say it took me years to fight for the lake because he likes the ocean. And I'm like, I'm a lake girl myself, not a big fan of the ocean. There's enough commonality between us that it just kind of works. And the truth of the matter is, and I'm going to talk about this later on as well, I had to really look at my codependency in my relationships and see if there was actually realism behind seeing my partners checking every single box in my life. Like, is it realistic to say that this one person has to fulfill me in every single way? And I don't think that's realistic. And, I have seen people's deal breakers be sex, where they're like, I'm not satisfied in sex in this relationship, so I'm going to go find another one that does. And that's their deal breaker. My husband is consistent in the way he shows up. He creates such a sense of psychological safety for me, which I did not have in my first 30 years of relationships. Every person I had been with before him had a secret life, had a double life. Every single one of them. My husband is so boring, so incredibly boring, and I love him for that. I know he's probably going to listen to this because he was watching some of the things, but I know what I'm waking up to every day. He never changes. And yeah, we might have had over the course of our 15-year relationship like a couple like breakdown moments. Every relationship does. And sure, I've thought about walking away a few times. I'm sure he has too. He met a girl that was an athlete that worked on race cars, and now I am a pleasantly, soft woman who's bared 2 children, who sits all day to meditate or serve spirit in some capacity. I changed a lot, and he put up with a lot as well, right? A lot of incongruence, like a lot of shifting and changing that he had no interest in. So both of us have had to make incredible sacrifices in our relationship and on our path together. And I honor him for his sacrifices and the fact that he stuck it out with me. And I know that he honors mine too. And, it's hard for me being a Capricorn South Node because it is easier for me to work. In maternity leave, I had the government job. He worked with race cars, so I got the maternity leave. But I would have happily had worked and had him stay home because I love working. I am a workaholic, and I'm not saying that in any kind of flex. It's a problem. It's a problem because when I'm insecure, the answer is always you need to work harder. You need to work more. That's not good. I'm trying to heal that shit within myself, right? So, I'm saying too much. I'm just giving you all too much here. So let me just continue on. The good. So me and my husband are in a point now where we fully support each other in our paths. We are always going to have problems. We are always going to have hiccups. So does every other relationship that you exist with your boss, your colleagues, your friendships, your siblings, your parents, your children. There's always ebbs and flows. Can we accept that? Ebbs and flows in every area of our life. So let's move that aside because that's going to happen anywhere you go, anyone you end up with, anyone you land with. My husband has watched me become a master manifester and somebody who really isn't afraid to take chances and create their own path, that he doesn't doubt me anymore. He used to get frustrated with me when I first started opening up spiritually and realizing that spirit responds to your declarations. Some people might call this law of attraction. I see it more as being very convicted of my path forward and telling spirit, this is what I need. This is where I'm going. And it always pans out the way I declare it. And so he would watch me frustratingly in the kitchen. He's like, we're short of money. Like, I don't know how we're going to do this and this and this. And I'd be like, I'll just make more. And he would get so frustrated. Like I was like living in La La Land, and 100% of the time I would. And so after a couple of years of watching me really create this life and career for myself that is magical for me, he doesn't doubt me anymore. He does not doubt me, even though he just rolls his eyes and he still has no interest in manifesting for himself. He is happily to vicariously, get these windfalls like through me for many years. And now we're actually at a point in our relationship where I am struggling a little bit more and he's receiving all these windfalls. Warren Buffett just bought his company, just to give you like one example. And so, both of us are feeling very supported by the world right now in very different ways. And we're always kind of like holding each other in the opposite ways. Like I'm struggling a little bit more in one area and he's thriving in that area. And then he's struggling in a certain area and I'm thriving in that area. And that's health, because I'm lifting weights and I'm working with a trainer, and now he has a disability essentially because Canadian healthcare sucks, and he can't get any help, and so he's like he can't feel his foot, so he can't play volleyball and do that stuff anymore. So it's kind of interesting, and you might notice that in your friendships as well. Like you're just balancing and holding space for one another when you have resilience and you have strength, and then you have to hold space for them, and then you're in your weak moments and then they can hold space for you. It's like this beautiful dance, and that's something that we always see kind of having go on. And with my expenses with the school, I'm not able to pay myself, and he is more than compensating for that in his career now. So it's just always magnificent to watch how we are always held and supported. And so I think in that way, he definitely is more of a believer, and he's feeling very confident in his life, and he's very, very supportive. And, the big pivot for us was that conversation in 2019. And then I had an anxiety attack after that led me to hospitalization. I couldn't work for a couple months. I was on a heart monitor because of stress from my corporate job, and really the incongruence in my life between feeling trapped in this corporate job, which I loved, and it paid me well. But because it paid me well, I didn't feel like I could take a chance on my dreams. And I ended up with an anxiety attack, and my journal was bored, and all those stories because that's how I started this podcast. And I had this session with this mentor, and they just said something that I don't know felt true for me. And he said, when things are good at home, things are good in business. And I had been considering taking a leap and, going full time. And then I had that anxiety attack and I had that mentorship session. So when I was off work and I was really considering taking a leap to going full time in my mediumship, I'd been doing it for 9 years at this time. I started involving him a little bit more in the practical business side of what I do. And I started saying, do you think I should incorporate? I'm a sole proprietor right now and taxes are at 30%. And if I incorporate, they would only be at 13%. And then all my other stuff would be expenses. And I felt myself expanding. And this was before the pandemic. And so I started including him, and he loved that. He loved that practical double Capricorn, talking about incorporation. What do I name the business? And he loved being part of that. And I kid you not, 3 weeks later, he said, I think you should leave your job. I think you have to give this a go. If you want to give this a go, I will give you 6 months, like pain in the ass free to like literally soar. And I did. I quit my job, and it was because of his encouragement. And it was only because of his encouragement because I decided to include him. I didn't try to convince him in anything. I wasn't talking woo-woo spiritual. It was like, hey, I need to name this business. I need to go through the legality of incorporating it. Help me. And he did the research. He's actually on my business title as like a 50-50 kind of like owner. He's a shareholder. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think he gets anything from that. I should talk to my accountant about that. But It's we can have we haven't done this, but my accountant's like, you guys can have an AGM in Tofino if you want and have it like expense through the business. But everything I make, I reinvest in the business, unfortunately. So it hasn't worked out like that. But, that really was a turning point for us. And things have been really, really, really great since then. And even like with the school, he helped me hang all the curtains, and, he'll help me out there where I can. And as I'm having to make some really big decisions around that area of my business, he has been nothing but supportive of me. And so I'm happy to say 13 years later, we have connected on common ground on this. And I think it's because he knew I was not going to leave this path, no matter how uncomfortable I was. I'm literally here to experience the discomfort, to continue to expand, to bring back teachings for you all. And that's what we all do, right? We integrate and we embody what we go through, and we try to find a way to share it, give people a heads up. Hey, if I could save you this, maybe you can experience something different, and then maybe we can continue to expand and not repeat all the same cycles and all the same learnings. And so, there's that. So now that's our story, essentially. I have a couple other notes, and then I want to answer some of your questions, because there was a lot of questions and comments that came through. So this is already going to be a very long podcast episode. I hope you enjoy it. I will also say my husband's very proud of what I do, and he's proud of who I am. He works with scientists and engineers. He works in green technology now, and he's very proud to say who I am. And a lot of his work is probably listening to this, and they follow me on Instagram, and they're very curious. And I'm happy to say he'll pop up my website. He uses my Heal That Shit mug. He's proud of me. He really, really, really is. And I'm so happy that we stuck it out. And I'm so happy we honored those ebbs and flows. And I'm so happy that we were able to find so much more to connect on, because there's a lot more to connect on than just your spirituality. We are here for a rich human experience that encompasses like health, finance, spirituality, the home, parenting, career. There's so many different areas of life that I would hate to cheapen a rich relationship to have to be defined or determined by one area. But again, that may be your deal breaker. That may be your deal breaker. It's just not mine, right? Again, if my husband was a third child, we would not be together. His saving grace is he is a hands-on dad. He is hands-on in the home. He makes my life easy, not harder on the whole. And he's a huge contributor to the beautiful life that we have. If he wasn't, he would not be here. And those are my deal breakers. I do not want a third child, and I do not want someone who carries the weight with me. Okay. So you have to decide that for yourself. Okay. So let me see here. What was I going to say? So, I want to talk about balancing that mom and being a medium. So, and I have a lot coming up for the moms, by the way. I channeled, if you will, an entire offering around this. One's for the spiritual moms. If this is an interesting topic for you, please leave a comment on Spotify or message me, because I really want to do this. I want to do a whole class series, super affordable, on being a mom and spiritual growth and evolution, because there's servitude. There's a whole lot of things we have to consider as moms that have a whole nother responsibility in life, plus a passion that we want to follow. There's a lot I have to say on the topic. And, my husband's biggest complaint, and the thing that he couldn't understand the most, was the fact that I would choose to go sit in circle with other women, which other women's like, of course, it's how it's always been done, right? But he could not believe that I would rather do that than like go to the lake with the family or hang out at home with him and the kids. Like, that was unfathomable to him. And it was necessary for me. Absolutely necessary. And it was so fulfilling for me. And so even though there wasn't support, even though it created some resentment, I still chose to do it anyways. And that was a sacrifice I had to make. And I do not believe my children suffered from that decision. I also believe that my abilities came out through childbirth, because maybe in some way I'm meant to figure this out for them. Maybe this path is bigger for them than it is me. Whenever I have parents reach out to me about their psychic children or things that their children are experiencing, I always say your biggest responsibility is to develop yourself. And then you can become the best resource for your children. And so I loved mediumship and I loved developing mediumship. It was the best years of my life. And it was a balance. And, there was some negotiating that took place. And I'm the one that bent those boundaries. And I'm the one that continued to test his patience because of my martyrdom. And I'm a 3rd degree Virgo. It's the exact same as Mother Teresa. There is like this natural shadow quality of martyrdom that I'm always navigating and working through. And I couldn't say no to people. I would have an agreement with my husband. One Sunday a month, I'm in this circle. And then one Saturday a month, I am doing readings. And so that was our schedule. So there was 2 days out of 8 weekend days in the month that he would expect emotionally, psychologically, financially, that I would be away. And so I was the one that continued to push those boundaries. I would add a second Saturday, or I would say there's someone who really needs something. I need to do something on Wednesday night. Still to this day, I do the same thing. Like last night, tonight, Monday night, there's always shit. I still continue. So again, credit to him for his continuing patience and, supporting me as a main character in my life. I do get that support, even though it's not spiritual. It is 3D real. And I wouldn't trade that for anything, by the way. Though I will tell you, another disclaimer I wanted to bring in was, I don't know if life is better with a spiritual partner or without. I got what I got. I'm happy with what I got. I'm fulfilled with what I got. And so I can only speak to life with non-spiritual partners because I've never had a spiritual partner. There are people out there who are like, oh, me and my husband like meditate together. We have tantric sex and da 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 da. You are living your best life and I'm over here living my best life, right? And so I can't tell you what's better or worse, but the scheduling of the time was really hard, but something that was helpful was having it scheduled and managing those expectations. I stopped springing things on him and just trusted his own emotional intelligence and said, okay, next month, I'm working all weekend. So I had to tell him 2 weeks ago, I'm working an event. The Bespoke Market asked Spirit School and Spirit School students to come give readings on the train. So I'm going to be there to network and to welcome, new clients into some of our students and, and do some of those readings. And I'm looking forward to that and no complaints now. Years ago, I would have been paying for it. I would have been negotiating it. And now he just accepts it. And he knows that it fulfills me. And he has seen our family continue to grow and flourish through it. So that's a comment. Sometimes it is worth it to stick out because you just don't know how they're going to grow, and they may not grow in ways that you want and you need, but he's not you. They're not you, or she. They're not you. They're on a different path. They're on a different journey, and we're here to just witness each other in our journeys, not try to control or fix or convince. It's like, I honor you on your path. You honor me on my path. We go have our paths, and we have this very secure, safe, amazing home base that we get to connect into at the end of the day. We get to share what we want. We get to not share what we want, right? My ears are ringing as I was saying this. So that was really about the balancing. And then, sacred presence is the biggest secret weapon for any mom or anyone who has multiple priorities, and not even just moms, people who like volunteer in the community or have 2 or 3 jobs, who don't have even like the safety and security to like sit and meditate and like do all these incredible things. Rest, such a privilege, like the ability to rest nowadays. A lot of us are just like working paycheck to paycheck and looking for that next like meal. And I want to honor that as well as I talk about some really privileged things here. But sorry, I lost my train of thought on that just as I was going through it. So we're just going to leave that aside. If it comes back, it comes back. Oh yeah, presence. That's what I was talking about. So one of the things that I had to learn was when I'm with my children, I can't think about the readings. When I'm in the readings, I can't think about my kids. When I'm at work, I can't think about my marriage. I compartmentalize, I have a hard time with that word, my entire life, and I practice sacred presence. When I'm with my kids, even if it's only a 15-minute stint, they get all of me. If I'm like, out and about, I'm out and about. I try this with my dog a little bit more because I will cheat a little bit when I'm throwing the ball to the dog. I'll check Voxer or Instagram. I need to stop things like that because it's when you're trying to multitask. It's when you're dividing your spirit and attention that you can feel that overwhelm, or you feel like you're not living life, or you're dissatisfied in life. And so sacred presence, centering yourself, being with your husband when you're with your husband or your wife, or your partner, I should say, being with your kids when you're with them, practicing that presence is going to almost collapse time, in the sense where a minute will really feel like a minute, not 10 seconds. Right? Or if you're doing something that you really don't want to do, 10 minutes, right? This is where time is an illusion. 5 minutes here is not equal to 5 minutes there, right? Like 5 minutes, getting an endoscopy is not going to be the same as 5 minutes cuddling your dog, right? Like one's going to move quicker, one's going to be painfully slow. That's the weird thing about time. So that's a presence is so, so important. And I think that for anyone who is navigating a relationship where, your partner is not very supportive of your spiritual evolution and journey, practicing sacred presence with them, letting them know that, like, just because you're out here in La La Land doesn't mean that you're not also here engaged in the human experience as well, is going to be very important for the sacredness of the relationship and the reciprocity of the relationship, right? Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about coping, the benefits, and phases of development. So with phases of development, there is a beginning phase where this may be a bigger problem. The incongruence in the relationship may be a lot more apparent, because the beginning phase of any development journey, whether you're developing mediumship or psychism or anything else, you're in a season where you require validation to let you know that you are accurate, you are on the right track, that you are making a difference, that what you do matters. And so there's this fine balance, especially in mediumship, with evidential mediumship, where we need validation, but we could put too much importance on that validation. Right? A yes and a no is just purely energetic data that we're on the right energetic tether, that energetic stream of consciousness. If we get a no, we know that we have to pick another stream of consciousness to ride. If we get a yes, we know that we're on the right path. So there's this really, when we look at spiritual maturity, there's this infancy stage where we are looking for external validation. We're researching blogs. Does this happen to anyone else? What does this mean? What does this dream mean? And did that piece of information I gave you land? Does it make sense? And so this can eke out and leak out into other areas of our life as well. So we may have extra importance on our partners to validate our experience or be part of that validation experience as we are shifting our worldview, and nothing is the same again. And everything changes from a cellular level to the world around us during this time. And this is where we feel in our human that we need to be the most supported and seen. But from my experience, again, the spiritual evolution is a very personal and individual journey, right? It really is. And so if you're in the more beginning phase, the first maybe 3-4 years, as you're building your spiritual self-esteem and your spiritual confidence, it can feel very defeating to not be seen and validated in your experiences and the things that you're having. This is why I created the Spirit School Collective, by the way. My entire career has been building things that I wish I had or that I need. And so I created the Spirit School Collective to be a space for light workers to share ideas, to share experiences, to validate one another, to hold space for one another, because it is unrealistic to think that one person can hold all of that role in our lives. Again, if your deal breaker is, I need someone who can hold space for me, I need someone who is open and willing to spiritually grow with me, I need someone who can validate me, then that's your call, right? my husband checked every other box, but this one, I will go to my friends. I will go to this community that I had built. And I do. I mean, I even went live last week to like share like all the things that are going on my mind and my heart. Like I use this community to be my safe space to land, to be the people who can hold space for me. And a lot of the people in that community are dying to hold space for me. Like they're like, I want to hold space for you, like lean on me. And so, in that space, the collective, it is a space where we are like holding space for one another as light workers who are progressing. It's not just like, this is how you tune into your aura. Like that to me is so surface, and it's like we go so deep. So I created what I needed, what I wasn't getting in my marriage. I created the thing, and it's 5 years strong, and it keeps growing, and it's fantastic. And I know that the Spirit School Collective is the space where a lot of people get to have these conversations and feel that sense of fulfillment outside of the marriage. Because guess what? I hope you are experiencing some sort of life force energy and love and abundance and grace and connection outside of your relationships. I hope that you're not putting all that pressure and going all on black on that relationship. Is there enough commonality outside of spirituality that helps fulfill you in that relationship? The answer may be no. Again, if my husband was cynical about my path, or he did not contribute to the household, not just financially, but like laundry and cleaning, and he does more of that than me, by the way, we would not last. That would be an accumulation of faults. But I'm very lucky that I have a fantastic husband who, if this is his only fault, I can live with that, because guess what? I can get a lot of the satisfying conversations outside of this marriage, and I have the space, the confidence, and the security and safety at home to be able to do that. And my husband is not threatened by that in any way, shape, or form. And so, yeah, I created that community. Right? There's also a phase and a season of our development where we're all in. And it can be really hard to connect with other people. It can be really hard to have small talk conversations. It can be really hard to find connection with people. As an entrepreneur, I have a hard time talking to other people who are not entrepreneurs, like people who don't understand the all-consuming nature of, people relying on your income for their income, or the overhead, or the pressure to continue to serve and advance and create new opportunities for the people who are invested in your work to continue to grow and thrive in. The lawyers, the renewals, the fees, the increases, the pricing, the refunds, it's a lot. It's a lot. And though there is this season through our spiritual maturity journey where we are all in, and it is really hard to connect with people who are not also like all in. And again, I'm going to point you to the collective or even the free spirit school space, because this is where you can really be all in for a time. But you are not meant to come to Earth School, to bypass Earth School and spend your time in the clouds trying to connect to where we come from and where we return to. We come from there, we will return to there. And there are certain people who wake up to that connection because they are meant to help serve, humanity through Earth School. And so there is a season where that is where we just want to be. I remember that season really well. I would put my kid to bed. I would say goodbye to my husband. I'm going back to my bedroom, and I would meditate, pull cards, do pendulums, journal. I loved it. And he had nothing to do with that. I can only imagine how he felt on his couch. Like, she used to sit here and watch hockey with me. I still have no interest in hockey to this day. And I used to watch, I never missed a hockey game my whole life. And you just change. Your worldview changes. Your interests change, right? And so these were my all-in times. And again, I have empathy, compassion, and gratitude to my husband for standing by me while I completely ignored him so that I can pursue my passions, right? I have a level of gratitude and empathy for that. And it can be all consuming. And then there will be phases where you just want to say F it all to the path. I'm done with doing the inner work. I want some ease in my life. And you realize that the human 3D actually can be a lot easier than the spiritual evolution path. And you will be so happy to have a husband or a partner or a wife who is in the 3D, who just wants to go to the lake, who, wants to run a budget, who wants to put money towards your future vacation home. And you will be so grateful to have like an earthly person to connect in with, so that you can have have some reprieve from the deep work that comes with spiritually evolving and growing. And that is a huge, huge benefit as well. So he keeps me grounded during the seasons of my humanity, and he keeps me grounded even when sometimes your ego can get away with you in this work. It feels good to help people, and it feels good to have a lot of people love you. And I think that the way that I've been able to maintain and manage my humility is in part because of my husband not seeing me as any kind of celebrity or guru or spiritual leader. He's like, this is Danielle. This is, she loves cars. She's like, I'm not fancy in any way, really. And I'm the girl that he's always really loved. And it keeps me incredibly humble and connected to a part of myself that I also really love. And I'm glad doesn't change. And he reflects that back to me. I'm still the happy girl that he met. I just have a lot more on my mind now, is all. And he's helping me through a lot of that. And the truth is, he's a true partner in life, not just my spiritual evolution, but the sense of safety and security of our home, beautifying our home, creating more comfort within the home, creating a space that, I want to be the host as a teenager that all the kids come to. Like, we're buying a hot tub because as teenagers, I want the kids at home. I was a gamer my whole youth. I was gaming. I was on the computer. I was not out getting into too much trouble, though when I did go out, I did get into a lot of trouble. A lot. This is part of my colorful past. It will make it in the book one day, but there may have been some arrests. We'll see. I was a very colorful teenager, but I was at home and I want my kids at home, and my husband's in agreement with that. So we do have a VR headset. We do have a PS5 and an Xbox and a 60-inch TV and a hot tub. And I want to be the place that the kids want to come hang out in. And we love that about our future. Like, we're already thinking about our future like that. And it has nothing to do with spirituality. And so when I think about a life partner, I couldn't ask for more. I could not ask for more. So there's that. So how do we cope? Right? How do we cope? And then I'm going on to your questions. This is going to be the longest podcast in Spirit School history, though I think the Aboriginal medium Sean Leonard interview from 2 years ago was, I think, around 2 hours. So we'll see where this goes. And it's my Voxer day. I have my masterminds, my mentors and business masterminds, and I have a Pick My Brain day where for 3 days a week, they can message me anytime, voice note me any questions, and we just kind of like riff, and they get one-on-one access to me through that. So today is my Voxer day with these two masterminds. And so I'm getting a lot of messages from them I want to connect in with here too. So this is where I say in my reel, having a non-spiritual life partner deepened my connection to my inner spiritual world, because I had nowhere else to go but within. I did not have a spiritual community until I built one in 2020 through this Spirit School Collective. I created it August 1st, 2020. And until I had that community, I did not have community. I had people I had met along the way, and I won't go into it. Friendships in this space is really hard as well. That's what we're trying to change in the Spirit School Collective. We can watch other people thrive without questioning our own. That's the atmosphere that we create. It's non-competitive as far as I'm concerned from what I experience in it. And so, I would not feel seen or supported spiritually or held by my life partner. And so where do I go? I go to spirit. And so not having someone to speak to or verbalize every spiritual experience. I had my journal. I had my online journal, which was the start of the Spirit School podcast, was based off of my online journal that I'd had since 2013. I captured everything, every experience. And some of these spiritual experiences is like, they're totally, you had to be there, right? Like, they sound so profound to us because we experience them. But when you tell someone else, they're like, oh, cool, right? Like, cool, you had an eagle fly in front of your car, like, sweet. But you're like, but you don't understand. It was like, when I asked spirit for a sign, like, a lot of these experiences are like, had to be there. And so I captured a lot of mine in a development journal that ended up launching my career, back in 2013, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 20. Were really kind of like my upward projection in my career. And I had these spaces to capture some of these things. And I'm so glad I did, because I didn't have somebody in my real life. And I remember opening up to my first friend about mediumship. And she basically, just shared with me how she was a cult survivor. So it was kind of like I don't want to talk about this. So I really had no one. And my spiritual teacher, did not like me, it turned out. So I was not getting a lot of support with my first mentor either, to be honest with you. So it was really a solo path for me, and a solo journey. And I do accredit my connection to my guides, the inspiration I've received from my guides, the way that I can go into a spiritual sitting, which is not sitting in the power. It's a contemplation. It's a divine conversation. And it was really because I had nowhere to go but inwards. And so this is where I find my greatest spiritual fulfillment is when I actually take the time to sit and go inwards and go to spirit and go to the guides. Thank you for, listening to me. Thank you for taking some of these concerns. Thank you for inspiring me on where to go next. And I don't know if I would have gotten that depth of inner spiritual connection than if I had, somebody external constantly to talk to. So that was a huge, huge benefit for me. And that's how I coped as well. I would go in and I would go to spirit. Humor. Now, this is definitely cultural when it comes to, like, if you go to any indigenous culture, of course, they have experienced some of the worst horrific genocide and assimilation in Turtle Island, North America, for sure. And I used to work in First Nations health governance in the political field, and I would sit with, like, the chiefs and the counselors and talk about, like, residential school survivorship, and there would be laughter, and there would be humor, and there would be a coping through joy that I'd never seen demonstrated anywhere else. And it was a huge teaching for me to find humor in every situation as well. And looking back at, okay, here's a good example, not very spiritual, but the day before I left for New Zealand, I was so unhappy. I was so depressed. I mean, I considered not going because I was at a spiritual bankruptcy and a rock bottom. And I had this horrible experience with this, she was lovely enough and she's not a horrible person, but the girl who was doing my nails, kept trying to control my kids. She told me I was autistic and that I had OCD. Like, she was, like, diagnosing me, and then she kept trying to make me feel bad. She was like, that's why I'm on this side of the chair and you're on that side of the chair. And I was just like, oh my God, I can't hold space right now. I just need to fly tomorrow and I hate flying. And she took so long on my nails that my car got stuck in a school parking lot where the fences were put up, and they were closed for spring break. So for 2 weeks, because they closed the gate at 7 and my nails went till 7:30. I literally tried to drive through the field like a crazy person. I completely lost my mind and my dignity that day before I left for New Zealand. It was the lowest I've ever been in life, and I can cry thinking about that. But sure enough, later that night, I'm thinking about the ridiculousness because I had to abandon my car. I had to get somebody to come drive me home. I didn't know how I was going to get my car out. I was flying for New Zealand the next day. And of course, like, you just have to laugh. There's nothing you can do but laugh your ass off, right? Like, there's nothing to do but laugh. And so, you laugh about it. And here I am telling you, like, a story about it, and it will get funnier as more time passes, because it was very stressful. And it was like a whole series of unfortunate events. And yeah, it was awful, but you have to laugh about it. And I would use humor as a way to cope my whole life. My parents, back in the 80s, people were very physical. I used to get spankings, man. I got smacked across the room once when I called my mom a bitch without even knowing what bitch meant. Never said that word again to her. I mean, that's what it was, Gen X raising, right? Like, I'm pretty much like the last Gen X Zennial type generation, but that's the way things were. And to avoid getting hit and spanked, I would drop to the floor and do a crab walk, and my parents would just laugh, and they couldn't hit me after they would laugh. And so, I know my parents are listening to this. It was just spankings. My parents are lovely and they're non-abusive in all the best ways. And I discovered really early that humor can get me out of almost anything. So humor was absolutely a way that I helped navigate, my husband not being very supportive. I would just make jokes about it and he would laugh, and not poke fun at me or degrade spirituality in any way. But like I say, that example of like twirling in the kitchen, I'll just make more money then. And he would laugh and just roll his eyes. And I was dead serious. And I did it. And he does not doubt me anymore. And then also just looking for the alignments. It's really easy. We are conditioned in the human experience to have a negative bias. We really, really are. I'm sure that there's science to this and there's lots of things written about it, but you can either look for the problems or you can look for the alignments. Is there an opportunity to look at the relationship and see all the amazing things that are there, and then decide for yourself if that's enough or if that's enough for right now? Right. And, if this is one kind of like negative and these are the positives, what are the real deal breakers here? And so anytime that I've kind of felt like unsatisfied in this one area of my life, I would zoom out and take a broader perspective and say, like, where are the alignments right now? Like, where are things working really well? And I was able to discern for myself what, I would put up with and what I wouldn't put up with. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. So this is my scheduled conversation, and we're already at like an hour and 22 minutes. So I'm going to breeze through some of these comments and questions that you have. And if I hadn't touched on them already, I will answer them. And then if I had touched on them, I'll say, I think I answered this. So I'm going to go to Avery first because she was the one who sparked this idea. Okay, so the first one was like, I'm curious how you handled your spirituality with your spouse not being into that and having to balance that. Your situation sounds similar to mine, and I'm curious how you found balance in your marriage when this something so significant in your identity. And I think that's kind of like the tricky thing. I can see myself as being Squamish medium, and have that be such a strong piece of my identity. And in truth, all of us who have spiritual businesses will have to face our identities at some point and realize we are not our businesses, and our businesses are not us, and we are spirits. And so I've had to have a lot of humbling readjustments in my thought process around this, that, I am just a spirit having a human experience. My husband is just a spirit having a human experience. And we're meant to have these individual experiences and, support each other like through them. And supporting each other doesn't necessarily have to be an ear for you, because you're in the collective, you have ears there. Maybe it's not as satisfying for you. Maybe you need to find a spiritual bestie, or a circle to kind of be in closer. But my identity is more than being a medium, and my identity is more than somebody who is spiritually evolving. I have a lot of different identities, and in the same breath, I think a lot of spiritually maturing is separating ourselves from identities and releasing. It's like a subtraction process, right? And so, yeah, I've had to really see myself as more than just a medium and more than just somebody who is, consciously expanding. I'm more than that. I'm multifaceted. I'm multidimensional. I hold many different roles. I have a lot of different responsibility. There may be a phase that you're in where this is an all-encompassing phase of your development, and you will move beyond this phase as well. So it's worth looking at that if that philosophy fits and supports you. Was your husband aware of your spirituality or mediumship when you first got together? No, neither was I. Of course, I'd always gone to mediums. I had always watched mediums, and I did not realize that that was kind of a calling to spirituality. I just thought it was entertainment. That's how I saw it. So no, zero hint of spirituality in either of our lives, to be honest, other than I believed in like aliens and ghosts back then, right? But no, nothing. And that's how come my level of compassion and empathy is so high for him, because I'm the one that severely, drastically changed overnight, and he has stayed the same, which I appreciate. So as you grow your connection to spirit, it requires a level of self-healing. Do you feel the urge to have your spouse go along that same path? And have you ever gotten to the point where he wasn't ready? My husband has zero interest in healing, shadow work, spiritually evolving, or expanding consciousness. And I have to tell you that sometimes I am deeply envious of him for that. Deeply envious of him for that. That ignorance, the fact that he doesn't have to go through those roller coasters. And that's his role in this life. And that's how he chose to come in. And he is satisfied, happy, fulfilled in many ways, but still goes through hard times and the things that he's meant to come here and struggle with. So yeah, I'm happy for him to be ignorant to it so that I have some level of normality while I'm going through the dark night, while I'm going through the shit. He's just always an even keel guy. So I'm very, very interested in him staying like that. So when it comes into this healing arts world, it becomes a form of our identity as light workers. Has it been a challenge in your marriage when not being able to relate since he doesn't resonate with some of it? Yeah, I think we're all, yeah, they have that book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. I've never read it, but, I'm sure that touches on how little we can relate to each other, just being of a different generation. My husband's, 11 years older than me. We come from a different generation. We are different sexes. He's a white, male who has not struggled in life, to be sure. Like, he's lost his parents for sure, but he had a great upbringing. He didn't have any capital T trauma. He had some little T stuff, but not capital T. I was raised by a residential school survivor, intergenerational residential school survivor. There's a lot of capital T trauma in my life. And so we're hard to relate to each other just in the view of the world. I see the world, especially after working 10 years in Indigenous healthcare, through the eyes of an Indigenous lens. I have to call him in sometimes on some of his biases. So this unrelatability, I just want to zoom out this perspective, is actually happening in many different areas. I have financial trauma. He doesn't. He's never had debt. I lived with debt for my first 40 years. We have unrelatable connections in other areas of our life as well. So this is just another one. Again, it's not a deal breaker for me. It might be for you. So hopefully that perspective can help a little bit. So my husband is highly intuitive without realizing it, as a spiritual spouse, seeing that he can push us to urge them to tap into their potential. But how do you remain accepting of when they actively choose not? I have stopped trying to live life for other people a long time ago. So if he does not want to actively choose his own healing or choose his own spiritual develop or evolution, that's on him. I'm not here to live his life. I'm here to, make life better when he checks into our marriage and when he checks into our family, which is a lot. And yeah, he is very, very intuitive. And I think we all are. And I think that's how come we have equal access to the spirit world and we can all develop mediumship. But I think it's very karmic and dharmic and a calling for those who awake and choose to. It's a calling, just like being a nun is a calling or being a priest is a calling. I hate those examples, but I'm just giving you an example. If we're called to the nunnery, we're not going to try to bring our best friend or our aunties with us, right? Like, that's our calling, that's our path. And can we see it like that? Not everyone's going to awaken to that path. So I accept that where I'm at right now. But I will tell you, it was hard because in those earlier seasons, I'm in a very late season, kind of. I still feel like a baby in a lot of ways, but 13 years in, I've been through it a little bit with him. And there was a time where absolutely it felt very frustrating. But again, can I see the alignments? Can I see how it's actually somewhat beneficial having somebody who is not also on this up and down roller coaster, deep, dark work journey? Yes, I can. There's actually quite a few benefits to it that I was able to identify for myself. And that's how I manage and navigate that. Okay, so how has this affected? Okay, wait. In my research, in my MA program, in a clinical counseling, I've seen that being able to share these parts of ourselves is so important. Yet if your spouse doesn't believe in these things, what parameters, if any, do you have to remain connected in your relationship? So yes, I agree. And I'm glad the research shows this through clinical counseling, that sharing these parts of ourselves is very important. And that's why I created the Spirit School Collective. I created what I needed. And I do have spaces, I do have people, and I have amazing connections with people who want to hear about this, who will trade war stories with me, who will share their own epiphanies. And in that way, it's more fulfilling than having my partner mirror that back to me, because we almost sometimes in longer term relationships have like these like sibling kind of effects with each other, where it's like, I don't want you to tell me what to do. You're the last person I'm going to listen to. Right? We do end up with these dynamics with our life partners. So I'm happy to have a lot of people outside of the space of my marriage to reflect these things back, and I'll probably take it more seriously and to more heart from people outside of my marriage anyways, right? So it's like going to your parents for parenting advice, kind of, where it's like, I don't want to do exactly how you did it. And, it's kind of like the same parallel. So, and you got spaces, girl, you got lots of spaces to tune into. So find a lot of fulfillment in these friendships and in these spiritual relationships that you're creating with people. Okay, so I'm those were your. Oh wait, has this affected your parenting style, and has there been any pushback on the things you teach your kids about your spouse? There's a lot of eye rolls. I am someone who, I have a prayer that I've said to the kids since they were babies, and it goes, night night God, night night Mama God, night night all the angels, archangels, and spirit guides. Thank you for this day. Today I am thankful for. And that language can be hard for somebody who's not spiritual. A mother God, a God in itself, right? Like angels, come on. And, the truth is my angel connection came through my daughter. To go back a couple years, I did a podcast episode with her when she was 7 years old on that. And, yeah, I'm sure that is hard on him, but he just rolls his eyes. And I don't try to convince my kids of anything. I'm not trying to create spiritual gurus. I'm letting my kids be kids. We do pray. I do remind them of gratitude. I get the kids to talk to the angels for certain things. But I'm not trying to indoctrinate them. I'm not religious in any way. I have no Bible I subscribe to. I have no guru on the other side that I think is the Almighty. I believe in creation. I believe in the Creator's energy. And I use language that feels of a vibrational power and resonance in what it is that I feel is on the other side. And so we have a healthy respect of each other's parenting styles, and we balance each other very well in this regard. I think my husband is too hard on my son. And not hard enough on my daughter. We're going to have things that we disagree with in our parenting styles, but that's going to be for spiritual or not as well, right? When it comes to how we talk to our kids about money or sex, or God, I've said sex a lot in this. I'm sure my friend Amber, if she's listening, is like, oh my God, things are changing for you. Anyways, okay, let's go into a couple more comments. I'm going to close this off because I have been talking for a long time. So I wanted to share Karen. Hi, Karen. It's good to see you come up on my feed. Karen is an original Spirit School Collective member. She left a couple years ago, but we're still definitely always connected. We share a piece of our intimate spiritual journey with each other. We're always connected in some way, good, bad, expansive, or contractive. We've all have an imprint on each other's lives. So it was great to see this comment from her where she said, "This story about your husband made all the difference with my husband back in 2020. And a lot of people are attracted to learn from me because I am a mom, because I do have a partner that doesn't believe, because I do have this eclectic past. And I've always shared it with you guys, and I always will share it with you guys. So let me see if there's any comments here. Just wanting to highlight all the Capricorn hubbies out there and partners out there. Jenny Miller says here, as long as I feel that they're supportive, then that's really important for me. I definitely want my husband to believe in my work, which he does, even if he doesn't get it fully. He definitely doesn't need to read oracle cards, though. And she says, I like a man who could build a fence instead. Being open to things and different perspectives is important in all my relationships, but it's always nice to have friends that are in the same line of work to bounce things off of. Yeah, spiritual besties for sure. Okay. So I like this comment too from Marnie, who is a Sacred Spirit Retreat member who comes to my retreats, and I'm so excited to retreat with you again, Marnie. She says here, I had my oracle cards out the other day, and my partner asked, to my utter surprise, how do these work? And drew a couple for himself related to a new job opportunity. In my head, I was thinking that the cards were perfect for him, and I've learned not to convince him of any beliefs. A few years ago, I totally would have tried to explain how perfect his draw was for him. Now I'm at peace with the great divide and love that he is curious at times. I would love to know, Danielle, how did your partner verbalize his support of your beliefs and practices? And do you talk about them much with each other, or is this kind of don't ask, don't tell as far as specifics? Really looking forward to listening to this one. I'm really glad, Marnie. This is a very popular topic for sure. So does he verbalize? So he'll ask me how my readings are going, or, I was kind of like struggling before I left because I was spiritually bankrupt. Literally, I'm going to have a whole podcast episode and an offering coming up in the fall on spiritual bankruptcy and spiritual replenishment. And I was spiritually bankrupt. And I tried to do a reading. I canceled every other reading. I moved them all except for this one. For some reason, I kept it, and it was hard. My vibration was so low. I just could not get my vibration up, and it was a humiliating experience. It was humbling. It brought back some old wounds around, am I meant to be doing this? Am I good enough? And my husband was really sweet. He was like asking me in New Zealand, like, why are you so sad? And I said, well, I had this reading and it bummed me out, and it's made me question myself as I have already trying to rebuild my spiritual self-esteem. And he just looked at me. He said, Danielle, you've been really working hard on spirit school, and you haven't been able to do as many readings as you typically do. And, that's probably why as well. And, whether he's right or wrong, I don't know, but it felt good in a moment where he like reflected it back and had something to offer me. And that's how he does it. He's incredibly compassionate now. And I credit that because we didn't give up on each other. And yes, we had ultimatums and we've had some deep conversations, but we've seen each other through a lot. And I think that helps build a real relationship. And I wouldn't trade it for anything. And so, yeah, he's there for me when I need him at my lowest. And that's the only time I really need him, because I go to spirit for most of my things, or I go to the Spirit School Collective for the other things. And I have those two spaces. And when I'm really in it, he is there when I need him. And that's how he reflects it back to me. But he's still like, his mom just passed. He hasn't asked me anything about it. He has his beliefs around the afterlife. And even though they don't bring me comfort, they scare the shit out of me. In truth, they bring him comfort. And that's what matters. That's what matters. And I've sat enough with dying people with varying degrees of beliefs in the afterlife to know that whatever brings us comfort at the end of days is what's going to bring us comfort. And I'm never going to try to convince somebody else of what I believe happens when we transition back to where we came from, because it's all about what brings you comfort. And my beliefs will probably freak some other people out, and his beliefs freak me out. They really do. Okay. I can't say your name, sorry. But the last thing is Reddy. And she says, how to navigate deeply needing a spiritual connection with your partner, with a partner who doesn't want anything to do with spirituality and is stuck in the ego. Just be mindful of the judgments you're placing on them, because I could easily say my husband's just stuck in his ego. We have egos. We're not meant to transcend the ego and stay in a transcended state from the ego. The Creator gifted us these egos for a reason. And so we're not meant to like destroy them or bypass them. And if you are discerning for yourself that a deal breaker is, I need to feel spiritually connected to someone. I have a good example of a friend who left an 8-year marriage because she wanted to feel sexually connected to somebody. And that was her deal breaker. Would I break up with someone because of sex? Not unless they were having sex with someone else. But it's like there's so many other ways that we can connect and feel intimacy from one another. So this is just about, I didn't need that from him. Would it have been nice and like a bonus? For sure. But I learned to get my spiritual fulfillment through community with other women and men who were interested in the same things. I didn't need any of these other attachments to. I didn't need to know what you make or how you make money or, how you spend your money or, how you work out. I just need to know these spiritual things, and I have those spaces and places to do that. And so it's just not a deal breaker for me in my relationship. In fact, I can see some annoying relationships where two people are very, very spiritual, and I don't know how they get anything done. I really don't. How do you get shit done? I don't know. So it doesn't look like a relationship that I'm actually very attracted or drawn to myself based off of examples I see in real life. And that's my judgment. That's me being judgy AF, okay? So a partner who says they are ready to heal together, wanting to have enriched conversations and experiences with a partner who is not interested in talking or doing the same thing spiritually. Important topics about bettering the world, reaching our innermost layers of ourselves, et cetera, et cetera. I feel that so much. I'll tell you that I love social justice. I love politics. I love geopolitics. And my husband has no interest in that. He's never voted. I'm like, will you get your Canadian like passport so that you can vote? And it's like not important to him. And I will say that I would love to have conversations like that with this person and have somebody who had the same passion for clean drinking water for all and like, Indigenous land back rights as me. But it's unrealistic. He does not see the world through an Indigenous lens. He has not sat with communities who have been underwater boil advisories. So do I have a healthy level of expectation that he's supposed to meet me in intellect and passion about clean drinking water when he has never been faced with it? I think sometimes we have unrealistic expectations on our relationships. And so I just try to zoom out my perspective and saying, is this a deal breaker for me? And is this actually the space that I need this? Or are there other spaces where I can have this met? I will tell you that years of TikTok really helped fill my geopolitical and political satisfaction, because there were some great thought leaders on that app, people who were very open about sharing their passionate perspectives on it. I learned a lot from them, and there was great intelligent exchanges in that. Same with Reddit. There's some great Reddit boards in the financial community, in the entrepreneurship community, really high level, intelligent, qualified people. And these are where I go to get these satisfying, intelligent conversations. And I have kids to talk about with my husband. I have DIY home stuff, cars. I still love cars. We talk about like the new cars and like hideous cars, and we have enough to connect on that we can connect outside of these other areas that I could get satisfaction somewhere else completely. So that's just me. You're asking for my perspective, and I'm just giving you my perspective. But again, for yourself, this might be a deal breaker, and you have to decide that for yourself. You have to be like, this is the missing piece, and just look if there's other missing pieces as well. Look for the alignments and look for the misalignments. Like, make a list, decide for yourself what is going to be your deal breaker or not. Question: how do you deal with the unmet desire to share the deepest parts of yourself spiritually with your partner and love, but they don't care, don't want to meet you there? Are you still they're still your person? How do you meet that desire for yourself? So I think I've answered that like a lot of different times in a lot of different ways. It's a great question. And one thing that I do is like, he'll talk to me about work, and like he'll talk about like the interpersonal stuff that's going on at work, and they'll be like, hey, do you mind if I hit you up with something that happened to me today about my work? And then we meet each other in that reciprocity. If there was not a reciprocity, if he just wanted to dump on me and didn't let me dump back on him, that would be a deal breaker for me. But as far as I'm concerned, in our 15 years together, 13 years married, we have had nothing but a reciprocal relationship and experience together. So, no complaints from me in that regard as well. Yeah. So, he does care now because he cares about me. But there definitely was a few years, and I'll be real about that, where he would just kind of like roll his eyes and I would feel really unseen, and I just wouldn't go to him. And that's actually what drove me to create my space and what drove me to find community, a spiritual community outside of my marriage. And I can't tell you how beneficial that has been for me in career, in spiritual wealth, and in, emotional wealth. And so I love it. I'm glad that it happened. Okay, let me see if there's anything else before I give up on this episode. This is a long one, man. This is going to be like 2 hours long. Just going through here because I lost my page and I started all over again. And then if you want to hear about like the Spirit School Collective, come join us. We've had like 15 new people join this month. It's not just about development though. There is a development vault with over 300 videos. I think I could be exaggerating. It's probably more like 100 to be honest with you. But a lot of content, a lot of videos. I do a lot of things live. I vent there. It's where you get the most real reels from me. I do reading assessments. We have philosophy circles. We have other teachers who come teach other practice circles. We have partner practice pairings. We have reflective exercises, integration experiences, stretch assignment. It's really for every light worker or anyone who wants to have these deep, rich spiritual conversations. Like even this Friday, we're having our spiritual philosophy circle, and we do it once a month where I pick a topic, I pose a question, and we go into small groups to have intelligent, high level spiritual, high vibe conversations on this. And we get to know each other and we get to expand our consciousness together. This is the space. It's not a one trick pony. It doesn't do just one thing. It does absolutely everything. And so come check it out. I don't know how better to describe what it is. If you want to go deeper with me on any of this, I'm running 2 masterminds this summer. So these are where we meet 3 weeks a month for 2 hours, and it's responsive. What's going on with you? What specifically have you encountered in an experience? And let's work this out together. Let's mastermind this out together. It is the ultimate space holding container with me. And it is the place to get my live, direct feedback and energy in your life as a medium or as a light worker. I also created one that's going to be very small, just 6 people, for people who have spiritual businesses. Because as I mentioned throughout this, like there's a lot that kind of goes on. So I'm going to be running these just May, June, July, taking August off, and then I would be running big ones again in September. I'll do the initiation again in September. I haven't really decided, but I love holding space for people, and I have a lot to share in the spiritual space when it comes to space holding for you. So I've created this year, I've been focusing more on intimate, smaller containers, because most of my programs get like 50, 60 people, where I get to know your name, I get to know what's going on with you, and we work it out together. So those masterminds are kind of like on a sliding scale. The membership is $111 per month. You can drop anytime, you can come in anytime, and just come hang out. And if you're drawn to the way that I share information, the podcast is really kind of surface level compared to how deep I go into some of these spaces. So just inviting you into that if it feels so good. Those are all the questions that we really had. And, I wish you luck in navigating this part of your relationship and your spiritual experience. And just know that you are meant to have the richness and the full experience and all the suffering and pain and all the expansion and joy that this human experience has to offer. So don't bypass it. Don't wish it away. How can I grow here? Maybe leaving is growing. Maybe staying is growing. Only you can decide that for yourself, because this is your life path. This is your karma and dharma, and this is your divine free will. But hopefully today, based off of my experiences and answering some of your questions, you get some insights, or you heard something that you needed to hear. And I would love to hear your feedback. Please share it, message it, tag me on Instagram at Squamish Medium. Come into Spirit School to discuss it. Come into the collective to go deeper with me, or come into the masterminds to have me literally walk on this path with you for a few months this year. All right, sending you guys love.